been so long, and now my soul contrives in song to express my joy and my surprise.
Well, welcome to Prog Talk on bongolongmusic. My name is Frank Long, also known as Bongolong. Today, I'm really excited to have the members of the American progressive rock band, Yes, I'm excited that I have Advent.
We're all actually the same band.
I don't know where in the heck that came from.
We do have a direct connection to Yes, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, and another band. So anyway, first of all, let me introduce everybody. We have Alan Benjamin up there, who's in Jersey. We have Mark over there, Mark Ptak, correct?
That's correct.
He's from North Carolina. Joe DeAndrea.
That's the closest someone has gotten to it yet. It's D'Andrea, and D'Andrea, it's fine. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we used to know an Andrea that was Andrea, So and so you're from Jersey also.
Yes.
And then Greg Katona. Correct?
Yep.
Where are you, Greg?
Pardon me? Jersey.
You're in Jersey too.
Yep.
And then Henry, who's Henry Ptak, who's in Jersey also, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So you only have the one guy that ran away.
Yeah, we one escapee,
Yeah.
We can't reach through Zoom and like pull him back if we
I know, yeah.
Click and drag.
Yeah. That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us a few more years, I guess, in the technology side, right?
Or at least virtually,
All right.
So you can slap them virtually and you can feel it. Well, anyway, let's see. I wanted to just go over what you guys do. First of all, Alan, he plays guitars, electric and acoustic, bass. Do you play any upright or acoustic bass?
No, just I do play fretless bass. I actually have
Fretless, yeah.
4001 fretless.
Fretless are awesome. You play violin. I take it that's an acoustic violin, right?
Yes.
Keyboards, the stick.
Yeah, stick, recorder.
Mandolin, recorder, vocals, and you're one of the composers.
Yes.
And then Joe's the best guy in the band because he's the drummer. Percussion lead and backing vocals. Greg, guitars. I take it both electric and acoustic.
Correct.
Lead and backing vocals and some percussion and also composing. Henry is keyboards, lead vocals, backing vocals, percussion composer, as well as Mark, who is keyboards, lead vocals, backing vocals, percussion, and composer. So I want to know from each one of you guys, how old were you when you started playing? What was that first instrument? And was there any musician that you inspired you, or you wanted to kind of emulate or whatever? Joe, why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, let's see. I first began playing music at age 3.
Ow.
So my grandfather.
Not ow, but.
Yeah, ow. No, my grandfather played stride piano. He was a jazz improv pianist out of Hoboken and New York, who was a big influence on me.
Yeah.
So my uncle, his son, had a Rogers sparkly drum kit in the basement with all manner of recording equipment and albums and stereo stuffs. and they placed me on that. I couldn't reach the pedals, but I could use the sticks, and that's when I started. So I would go there whenever I would visit my grandparents. I would go into the basement, disappear, and play drums.
Wow.
And then
That's
come up for
cool.
snacks. Yeah, that was my early days.
And you had
That's what
great
did it.
influences.
Yeah, he was wonderful human, wonderful musician.
Awesome.
So.
Greg?
Yeah, so started playing when I was 9 years old. Shortly thereafter came Prog, right? So as soon as Crimson hit and Genesis and Yes and Gentle Giant and ELP and everybody else, then I was gone. I was away. That was the start of everything for me.
At that age?
No, I mean slightly later. So I started
Okay.
playing in like 68. So, 69, 70, Prague was already starting to get kickstarted around there,
Right.
I would imagine, right? Somewhere around there.
Mhm.
And so, but it was really a couple of guys, Steve Howe, the main one for me, a guy that was able to kind of get into a lot of different styles, incorporate them into a single piece of music. The whole idea of using different guitars in the same composition as different colors, that whole thing, I just fell in love with that whole idea, So the next thing was classical guitar. I fell in love with Andre Segovia and Julian Bream and all those guys, and modern classical music, and that was it. That was the real thing at that point, was getting into classical guitar. That was going to be my life. But before that, it was like anybody other kid, I liked a lot of prog stuff, messing around with bands and stuff, but it was really classical music that got me going. So that was the next big drive for me.
Yeah, and it's evident in the music of Advent.
Yeah, I guess I have the skills they needed, right?
Yeah.
They needed a guy that could do that too. So yeah.
And also load the van, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All those keyboards. Henry?
Yes, sir. I think probably for me, the first one was probably about 8 or 9. Guitar, interestingly enough, actually. My parents signed me up for guitar lessons at Robbie's Music, basically, in Patterson, New Jersey, which was kind of interesting. Loved my first teacher. I wanted to be Dwayne Eddy at that particular point. So loved Dwayne Eddy. And my first, as soon as my teacher knew that, he had a method of kind of like, as a regular general course of the way he would conduct the lessons, he would have you basically do the method book for about 5 minutes. And then he says, okay, what do you want to play? And I said, Dwayne Eddy. He says, okay, let's do 40 Miles of Bad Road. So he taught me to actually play 40 Miles of Bad Road, and he would accompany me as a rhythm type of a situation. So I was hooked. That lasted for about a couple of years. And by 11 or 12, I kind of discovered Bach and Procol Harum at the same time. Made the switch to keyboards, never went back, basically, essentially. And for me, I think probably my interests after that, because of the Bach connection, it was all classic, a lot of classical for me. I was looking to see a lot of pop music to reestablish that connection between the older and more venerable traditions type of a situation and something more contemporary, which was what was exciting me at that particular time. So yeah, once the Prog thing happened, that was like tailor-made. I got very interested, especially in the arranging aspect, because it's one thing to have a song. You can make a pile of money just writing the charts out and having one of those things could become a hit. But the thing that really solidified it for me is when you could actually take a song, arrange it in a way that was memorable, and say, okay, well, I didn't know you could do that with that song. And all of a sudden, basically, it acquired like this whole new life. For example, never been real crazy about Sympathy for the Devil by the Stones. But as soon as I heard the Blood, Sweat, and Tears version, I said, wow, I've never heard anything. This is like a perfect combination of 20th century classical, jazz, and rock music all at the same time. I was hooked at that particular point. So the fact that you could basically take a simple song, rearrange it in the hands of a guy like a Fred Lipsius or a Dick Halligan from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, or any of a number of the really, really good arrangers in any of the prog groups type of a situation, that's what really kind of this, because I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to take a song and then not just basically come up with the charts and the chord changes and stuff like that, but say also, okay, I want to arrange it in a way that's going to move people and really get them excited about, this particular thing, even though maybe only talking about 5 to 6 chords tops, but the arrangement and the substitutions basically just really made it for me.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much it. Then of course, once you actually get to the point where you kind of know what you want to do, you begin to decide things, well, maybe I have to write too. So I got some good lessons and stuff, and basically pretty much I did mostly private lessons with a couple of professors over at William Patterson College in New Jersey. And basically pretty much a lot of that stuff I just kind of explored on my own. And that's pretty much the story.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, Mark, follow that one up, buddy.
Well, it's
Is there any parallel with you guys? How old are you apart?
about 14, yeah, about 14 and a half or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or maybe, yeah, about 14. So yeah, so Henry, growing up in the same house, Henry happened to have a room in the basement, and mine was upstairs. So I kind of had I grew up hearing a lot of great stuff coming from downstairs. You know, when Henry was starting to get into all this stuff that he was just mentioning, the low frequencies would just come through the floor, and a lot of the great stuff I was just kind of listening to, hearing it, while he was listening. So so I kind of grew up just listening to records, just like we all did. But I had the good fortune to have Henry's really extensive LP library downstairs, which I would kind of go down there and sneak down there every once in a while and take an album or two and bring it upstairs and try to listen to it. And then he would just start handing me stuff. Hey, you really got to listen to this, or you really got to listen to this. And a lot of the stuff was like either a Gentle Giant or Procol Harum or Genesis or whatever, So, and he would just, like, for a birthday would come up and he would just hand me an album. Hey, here, this is for you. And you take one out of his collection and just hand it to me, and then go out and buy another one for himself. So I started to accumulate all this great music, thanks to him. In terms of maybe starting being a musician, I don't even really know. What, Henry, would you say like maybe 12, 13 was when you started giving me lessons around?
I think so. Yeah, I think pretty much as soon as we could actually, I think one of the pivotal points basically was you coming over and playing on the EML. We were actually yeah. Well, I had this I guess sort of like a poor man's version of the ARP 2600, basically by a company called EML. And it had a patch bay on it. It was a duophonic synth, and I had my keyboard set up basically. And I remember my wife and I had to go out at one point, and Mark would sometimes come over and sort of spend the weekend. And I just turn on the gear and say, go ahead, have fun. And he would basically start playing some of that stuff. We had some stuff at home. We had a Hammond at home, and I think basically I think we had the Hammond and the Leslie at that point, didn't we? Or was that afterwards?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because a lot of the stuff that really made me want to get into being a musician was seeing all the great gear that Henry had downstairs too when he was living at home. So a lot of the keyboards that he had amassed while he was learning how to play the stuff live with bands of his own while he was growing up. I would just go down there and be like, wow, this is great. He's got, I didn't know what they were. I mean, he had a clavinet down there, he had an organ down there, he had a piano down there, he had a Wurlitzer down there. So I was like looking at the stuff going, this stuff is really cool looking, and
Analog
I'd watch
heaven.
him play. Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't know what it was. I mean, what was I, like probably, 5, 6, 7 years old at the time, when I first saw this stuff. And I think probably the first thing I ever did was play Silent Night one finger at a time on his piano. I remember being down there like at a really young age doing that. But then, soon after, he started to give me lessons privately, and then I, picked up, I think I may have picked up one of his keyboards secondhand, paid him for it. Used that in a couple of bands that I was in, one or two of my own. Got started in some teenage bands, and then from there, while taking lessons with Henry, we stopped at a certain point, and I was getting ready to go to college, and that's when I enrolled in Berkeley, and that was pretty much, at that point I was a full-fledged, on my way to being a full-fledged musician, I would say.
Well, yeah, heading to Berkeley, sure. Awesome. Well, and then there's that guy over there, Alan.
Yeah, well, it's actually, I'm learning some stuff here, so it's cool. Some more details that I didn't know before. That's really interesting. For me, I guess well, I asked to start playing piano and taking lessons when I was 2, apparently. And my mom was very proud of saying that she made me wait until I was 3 to start. And she was an amazing pianist, songwriter. Her specialty at the time was probably more being an accompanist, because she was just really good at sight reading and good in that capacity. And grew up with a nice Steinway medium grand, vintage with ivory keys as the
And
centerpiece of
wonderful
our living
action.
room. And I just as soon as I turned 3, she hired somebody else. She didn't feel like she would be a great teacher for me, or that maybe the dynamic wouldn't be ideal. She hired this older gentleman named Paul Sargent, who got me up to speed really quickly on the basics. But then I got kind of bored with things once I kind of got the rudiments down. And I could sight read and do almost everything he gave me, but I just was already yearning to do some more interesting creative stuff, and I kind of burned out on it. Ended up switching to classical violin when I went to a new school in New York. I'm from New York City originally, and that school happened to have the best orchestra in the city too. So we had a great conductor, and I had an amazing teacher as well.
That's really important, that environment. I had that in high school. And
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And yeah, our
huge.
conductor was like world class, amazing, and my teacher both were just incredible. And I had played flute and took snare drum lessons along the way too, just as tangentially. But I have no embouchure, so when I play flute, it's on the best day it sounds like bad Peter Gabriel. I can kind of get the notes out, but I actually get dizzy when I play because I can't make that hole small enough. So it's actually really kind of embarrassing, but I'm kind of woozy when I play, for more than a
The
few
flute's
minutes.
blowing back, huh?
Yeah. But then I ended up, going to, well, I ended up getting sent to boarding school when I was 12, and I wasn't allowed to bring my violin with me. And that's where I kind of got into rock and roll and became primarily a guitar player. But I should go back and just say that my first introduction to really kind of prog, even though I listened to a lot of, interesting stuff, a lot of classical music growing up, used to go to concerts a lot too with my parents and see jazz too. Used to see a lot of great folks. But on the radio, I had heard the theme from The Exorcist excerpt of Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. And so that was probably the first real prog album I bought. I found out what it was, and I went to the camera store across the street that had a small record section and bought that. And that was really my first big step into prog, and also into being a multi-instrumentalist too, like the inspiration to be able to create, an album by yourself, which is something I'm doing now, finally, of my own. But so that's kind of where, I went, and then got more into prog, went to Berkeley as well when I was 16 and dropped out. And that's, I think, is probably as far as I need to go right now. I don't want to use up the rest of our time talking about all my nonsense.
I think it's funny. Does anybody ever really graduate Berkeley? They usually end up
Mark
forming a
did.
band and
Mark
cutting out.
did.
Did you,
Mark
Mark?
did.
Mark
Oh, well,
graduated.
good for you.
That's a
You're
rare
the
sighting
one.
in the wild. You've got one.
That's funny. Okay, I have a quick kind of silly question. What was the name of your first band? Mine was it was a little 3-piece, guitar, bass, and drums. It was probably about 67, something like that. It was called Meat, MEAT. The only gig we did was for I think it was Rainbow Girls, and my sister's party in the backyard. But
So you were the forerunner to Meatloaf then.
yeah, he got that from me.
Okay.
I still haven't gotten any residuals about it. Yeah, we were gonna have our first album was gonna be called what is it? I forgot. Anyway, but it was going to be a picture of
Pass some
ground beef.
potatoes, maybe.
No, it was a USA Grade or something like that. But
Meet
So-
the band.
Meet
yeah,
the band. Good.
yeah, meet the band.
That'd be a good live album. Yeah.
Yeah, really. Well, it was kind of like you used to call your name the band Free Beer. You know, free beer Saturday night, and everybody shows up. So where's the free beer? Well, they're playing. You know. Well, anyway. Okay, so Greg,
Yes,
what was the name of your first band?
it was called. The other guys will get the reference, I think. Kid Charlemagne was the name of the band. Kid Charlemagne.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was, needless to say, a Steely Dan tribute of sorts, and that was one of our big tunes. So yeah,
That's awesome.
hadn't thought about those guys in a long time. So that's a while
Mark,
back.
Mark, what was your first band?
So this was probably early 80s or early to mid 80s. If I remember right, the first band was named Tyrus. Tyrus.
Yeah, I was thinking it had to be a Y.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool name, though.
So,
All
yeah.
right. Joe.
Let's see. I left out a bunch of stuff. Everybody gave such amazing bios, and I kind of sold myself short. So I'll try to make up for that here. In high school, around the same time as Mark, we're about the same age. I was in a jazz ensemble quintet. I can't remember how many were in the band now. The hallmark of this band is that we never rehearsed. We just showed up and played improvisationally. We were called The Last Resort. The idea being, if you needed a band and couldn't find anybody, call us. We're The Last Resort.
Awesome. I like it.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Alan.
For me, my first band was in high school. I guess I formed it when I was about 14, and we were called Empire for a while. Even had shirts printed up and everything. But then we became aware of a band that was local. This was outside Philly, my boarding school. There was a band called Empire of the Ants that was local, and we thought that was too close. And just as a really weird piece of trivia, the leader of Empire of the Ants played guitar and keyboard simultaneously, which is kind of interesting. So we end up last minute changed our name to Amber and did a demo, recorded a 3-song demo financed by my mom at the studio she used to use for her demos, and the engineer was Les Paul Jr. So when it was right around the corner from Music Row in New York, like Manny's and Sam Ash, and cut a 3-song demo. And my mom tried to shop it too. And apparently one of the producers that worked with ABBA was kind of interested for a while, but never did anything because we were young. But yeah, so Amber, but originally Empire.
Okay. Henry, what was your first band?
I got you guys all beat. I couldn't wait to start playing. So probably within about a year or maybe even 6 months of learning my first chords on the guitar, I played. I formed a band actually with a local guy who couldn't play. He bought a guitar just so he could do a Stu Sutcliffe and kind of pretend to be playing on stage. Because it looked better to have 2 guitars on stage with somebody actually playing. And the drummer bass was pretty good. But the name of the band was the Galaxies. I was 9 or 10. And we used to play the whatchamacallit, they used to have like these rec nights at the grammar schools in our area, like certain nights of the week during certain times of the year. You could actually kind of get the stage, the auditorium, and you can kind of go up there and basically play. And that was the big event, to have the local rock star wannabes get up on stage and basically play. So we would do like Please Please Me, Secret Agent Man, Wipeout, the usual things that basically.
It was kind of a surf band.
No, not really. We didn't have a
Okay.
theme. We just basically wanted to imitate the people that we liked.
Yeah.
And basically at that age, pretty much, we were just happy to be up in front of people and getting that feedback, people applauding or booing.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, no such thing as bad publicity at that age. But basically, pretty much, that was it. So I probably would have been about 9 or 10 or thereabouts, basically. Literally within a year of my first guitar lessons, whatever I could do at that age, we basically just kind of got up and we used to do the rec nights. We did a thing in the park one time. By that time, we got an organist, but he had like one of those cheesy, like accordion style organs with the buttons on it. And we couldn't amplify it. So basically we had to put like a really cheesy microphone by the speaker on his organ. That meant that we had to sing without the microphone pretty much. But Yeah, as I said, that probably lasted about a
Great.
year. And as I said, we had naturally we were convinced we were going to make it.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's cool. That we're okay. So I had asked you guys to pick out 3 favorite albums and 1 guilty pleasure. And the purpose of this exercise was just to see kind of where your musical backgrounds are. We did hear a bit of that from your history. But I just thought it would be kind of fun. I pulled out a few of mine. And so let's start with Greg.
Okay. I pulled some stuff off the wall. This is vinyl because of course that's what I first heard these on, right? So, okay, so talked about Julian Bream before. This album, I don't know if you guys could see this album. It's called Julian Bream 20th Century Guitar is the name of the album. Came out in 1967. And this album literally blew my mind. There's nothing in the world musically that has done more for me than that album. When I heard, there's a few really well-known composers' music on there, but the big one was Benjamin Britten, who had written a piece for guitar called Nocturnal, and it runs about 20 minutes. And Julian Bream, when he first recorded it, announced to the world this was the greatest piece of music he'd ever played on the guitar. And when I heard it, I totally agreed with him. It became an obsession that I was going to get the kind of technique needed to play a monumental piece like that. And plus, there was other great stuff on there too by Henry would probably know some of these guys, Henza and Frank Martin and composers like that, 20th century composers. So I was totally hooked with the whole world of guitar and classical guitar, being a soloist. And, you know, I naively felt that, oh, I guess a lot of people like this kind of stuff. But once I got out of college, I realized, hey, hardly anybody likes this kind of stuff. So, you know, when people think of classical guitar, I think they tend to think, you know, 18th century stuff, which is great. I love all that too. But it was really the modern stuff that gripped me. Leo Brouwer, another Cuban composer and guitarist, was a big influence as well. But, you know, I naively thought at the time, oh, I guess a lot of people like this stuff and listen to it. Wrong. Okay, that's my first one. Second album.
Did you say Benjamin Britten?
Benjamin Britten, yeah. The piece is called Nocturnal. That was the one that really turned the tide for me. And then I wound up in college. That wound up being my third year jury performance with that piece and other things as well. So I met my goal finally in college to get to that level. In any case.
Awesome.
Next one up, of course, everybody knows this one. It's Topographic Oceans, you know. So, of course, Steve Howe, I already mentioned his big influence on me, you know. The way he can sketch in styles from all kinds of different things, from country music to jazz. You guys know Steve. He could do anything, right? So, still can.
Yeah, Prog on a steel guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought, you know, right? And then I just picked this one up pretty much at random. This is a nice, it's kind of an out of print album as well. I don't know who in the room here knows Georgi Ligeti. This is a recording of his only opera, Le Grand Macabre. And if you guys don't know the name, I'll mention a movie and you'll say, oh, and of course he became famous with 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I thought that I recognized it.
Yeah, when Stanley Kubrick took some of his music, particularly his Requiem Mass, which was his masterpiece and my favorite of his works. But he took a bunch of his music, threw it all over 2001, which of course was a great idea because that music fits that otherworldly thing, right? But Ligeti didn't know about that until afterwards, and he tried to sue Kubrick to have the music. But what eventually happened was they became best friends. And when Stanley Kubrick died, Ligeti was the one that took his wife to the funeral. They were that close in later years. But anyway, his music, he's huge. If the other guys don't know him, the only living composer to ever have his entire composed output recorded under his supervision while he was still alive. So about 10 years before he died, Sony talked to him and said, we want you to record it. And they wound up doing it. It was, I don't know how many CDs, finally about 30, but he had a chance while he was still alive to supervise. And his music's so complex that was a great idea because he kind of figured once he's gone, orchestras are going to be making a shambles of his music, and they had in the past. And this gave him an opportunity to make sure, like when we check Advent scores, all the notes are correct and everything that's there was intended to be there. So yeah, he finally got his just desserts there. He deserved to be recognized that way. Anyway, so as you can see, classical music has been more of my thing. But of course, the Prog thing was that it incorporated classical music, and that was the thing for me. That's what drew me there.
Awesome.
So those are three big ones for me.
Did you have a guilty pleasure
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought about that one. It's kind of an odd question because I'm sure there's things in there that people would think are odd choices for somebody that has the kind of background I have. But I would say, like, over my shoulder here in the background on the wall, you'll see Brian Eno's Before and After Science. So perhaps for somebody that doesn't like that whole world of non-musicians making music, which is kind of what he was in a way, that would be a kind of strange choice, and a lot of people would think that music is odd. But that was the other big eye-opener for me, is discovering Eno and realizing that you could make incredibly beautiful music and you don't have to be schooled. And before that, I was not that guy. I just figured anybody that doesn't study and work on their skills, forget about it. I'm not interested in their music. But that was a big difference. That kind of, you know, the thing with Fripp as well, the Fripp and Eno thing drew me in as well. But so that's a kind of a guilty pleasure for people who don't like Eno or think that's kind of a strange choice. But yeah, that's another big one for me.
Cool. Okay, Mark, what do you got? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
There we go.
So I don't know. I guess I kind of cheated a little bit, you know, because
There's no cheating.
because it's so hard, you know. I mean, it's such a hard question to answer, and you could say one thing today, and then a year from now, you get you know, a whole bunch of different choices. You know what I mean? Based on your question, though, if you're you know, to be you know, truthful about it, there's probably three different things that I picked for what may have kind of molded me musically, and three things that I would consider favorites that I come back to on a regular basis. So I'll do it, you know, real quick so we don't dwell on it. But the three that are probably what's the word I'm looking for? Well, okay, so let's just go this way. So we'll do it this. We'll go. Number one was this. Okay.
Yeah, good one.
Okay. Probably, and I can thank Henry for this one too, because he introduced me to these guys at a very early age, and just the arrangements on there are really, really spectacular.
It's a brilliant album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one for me that kind of molded me musically, again, was this one. It's probably a no-brainer, you know.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, who's that? Who's that band?
Yeah. A
No,
no-brainer,
too obvious.
obviously. Too
Too
obvious.
The
Exactly.
band's called No Brainer. What?
Right.
Yeah.
So that one would probably be like, I mean, that in terms of composition and a lot of like rhythmically, you know, I missed mentioning this earlier, but somewhere along the line, as I was growing up, I think we had a drum set, like a little kid drum set in the house for a short period of time, and you know, obviously my mom wasn't too fond of it, but I did really kind of, my first desire was try to play drums, and then that didn't really fly, so I kind of had to go with the keyboard side.
I mean, play a real instrument.
Yeah. Whoa.
Oh.
Ouch. But
Joe
anyway,
can take it.
yeah, he knows we're only kidding. So rhythmically, you know, from a rhythmic standpoint, Gentle Giant was great for me. From an atmospheric standpoint, gotta be this.
Good choice.
So that was another one. Again, a lot of these are, you know, thanks to Henry, because you know they were brought to my attention at a very early age. And when you're that young and you're listening to the stuff like at age 7, 8, 9, and you listen to stuff like Procol Harum's early albums, you just like, they're so surreal in a way, and it just hits you a certain way because you're young and you don't really know how to process it, and it just does some cool stuff to you, and you grow up, you just have this this feeling about this music that is just which you wouldn't have if you maybe were if you had approached it later on in life. So those are those three. Quickly, my ones that I keep coming back to on a regular basis, gotta be this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and that's because of vocals. I love like vocal stuff. And here's another one due to vocals and great songwriting, which is Rundgren's Utopia. This was like a three-sided album. The second album of that. I think it's the same cuts on both sides. It was only a three-sided thing. Another one I come back to on a regular basis gotta be Jellyfish.
Yeah.
Jellyfish is great. I love Jellyfish.
I've not gotten into Jellyfish.
Oh boy, you're missing a lot, Frank. You really got to check them out.
And the Manning stuff too. Check out the Manning stuff too.
Yeah. So again, vocally, the arrangements and everything, just killer on the Jellyfish stuff. So my guilty pleasure, which it's kind of hard to say because guilty is something I'm assuming you're probably saying, what is it that you'd be embarrassed to show?
Exactly.
There's a lot of things that I could say that I like listening to that are they're just like, to me, a good song is a good song, and it doesn't matter who puts it out. You know what I mean? If it's like I could sit down and listen to the Bee Gees, I could listen to the Carpenters, I can listen to a whole bunch of stuff that maybe you wouldn't think somebody that's big into prog would do that. But for me, the guilty pleasure is probably this, because I got there's so many great songs on this album to me.
That's
Victor
cool.
Garber's on that
So,
one.
what's that?
Victor Garber and Lynn Thigpen are on that album.
Yeah. So some
Day
really
by
great
day,
songwriting on there.
Day by day is
Some-
beautiful.
Yeah, some great instruments, not instruments, but instrumentation on it. I think Paul Schaefer is a keyboard player on there too.
Yes, he is.
I think, that's
So-
funny. That's great.
Yeah.
No.
Ask me how I
Thanks.
know, theater kid.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, so I was hoping to share screen because I just got digital versions of the covers, so it'd be easier to show. That said, I have two of them out of the four. I also didn't really follow the assignment because by the time my brain was going full throttle, coming up with, I had about 50 albums. I'm not very good at cherry picking three indicative. So what I thought I would do, toss the list, because I was going to go down the list. You would have known. I'm willing to bet every band on that list. And I thought, what if I shared three bands that might not be well known or as well known that I'm listening to now?
Okay,
Why not, right?
that's cool.
So these will be all from off center, if you will. So the first one, this is a band from Lewisham, London, England, in the UK. They were produced by say that in a minute. But the band is it's pronounced Sidi Bou Said, and this is like I said, band out of London. The album was called Bodies. This came out in '95, and it was produced by Tim Smith of Cardiacs. You see there, I got my Cardiacs reference in. But this was, this album for me is kind of had that 90s 4AD band vibe, all the bands that were signed to them at the time. And it's just excellent playing all around. It's and Claire Lemon, who writes, I think is the main songwriter, can write a hook, just amazing. And that for me as a drummer, I tend to be fairly musical. Yes, you hit the things with the sticks, but you're also creating sound collage, emotion, evocation, things like that. And this album definitely does it for me. It ticks all those boxes. So that's one. Other trivia, Alan, I don't know if you know, Claire Lemon sang backing vocals on Dog Like Sparky on Sing to God. The Cardiacs album was
I
being
did not
recorded
know
that
that.
same year.
Did not
I didn't
know
either
that.
until 10 minutes before this call. I looked that up, like, oh, well, you know. The second band is from Boston. They are active still. They are, you may have heard of them. They're called Bent Knee. And this one is one I can't get out of my CD player for a while. It's called Say So. Very cinematic album. Very, very sweeping emotion and stuff, and all kinds of stuff, especially the closer. But I mean, all the songs are great, and there are also videos for several. But this is an adventure, and yeah, I really love this one. There are videos of the band where they perform several of these songs online. Very high quality video production. Check them out. That they're quite excellent. So yeah, Bent Knee, Say So. 2016 is that one. The next two albums I don't have the covers for. I should have gotten the fourth one. It's over there. I don't want to leave the camera here. How are we doing for time? We're good. So the third one, band originally out of Brooklyn. I think the composer has since moved to California, if I recall. But this is an album that has not left my my heavy rotation for a while. It somehow grabbed hold and did not let go. It's a band that's been away for 10 years, and they reconstituted this year or last year in 2022. The band is called Extra Life, and the album is Secular Works Volume 2. Medieval style, a lot of melismatic vocals, and just excellent. It's guitar, violin, viola, bass. Toby Driver is bassist on it from KO Dot. Charlie Looker is the guitarist and singer. And I don't know how else to describe it, except it also ticks all the boxes, especially rhythmically, with the drums by Gil. It's just been grabbing hold and not letting go, and it's been giving me ideas. So I can't wait to see them. I'm hoping that they come around this neck of the woods this year. So I'm looking forward to that. And Claire, if City Bow Saeed gets together again, I'll go see you too. Bent Knee I see often, so that's all good. Guilty pleasure, like Mark. I wouldn't say it's guilty pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's because again, I'm a theater kid, so I don't have the album. It's over there. I don't want to go get it right now. But the album I come back to again and again. It's a 2 CD set. I think it came out 82, 84 time frame, and it is the London original cast recording of the musical Chess.
Oh,
yeah. And so so here we'll do some connections, because you mentioned ABBA as an example. So aside from me enjoying the whole back catalog, Benny and Bjorn of Chess, of ABBA, wrote the music to Chess, and Sir Tim Rice is the lyricist. So that's how that one happened. And
I never got into it. I'm theater too. I spent about 20 years in theater.
Oh wow!
And so
yeah, it's one of those shows that keeps mutating. And I just saw a production of it a few years ago at Kennedy Center in DC. Completely revamped, songs rearranged, and it worked. That's the thing. But this is the musical that will not go away. And there are different versions of it and styles and whatnot. So that is my not so guilty pleasure, but definitely a pleasure. There you go.
Cool. Yeah. No, I love theater.
Yay.
And I think Stephen Sondheim, along with Jonathan Tunick, his arranger, you listen to Sweeney Todd.
I just saw that on Broadway.
Josh Groban, did you see Josh Groban?
Yeah, Josh Groban and Emily Ashford. I just saw it.
When I heard he was going to do it, I went, what? And then I've seen some videos and I go, holy crap, he's nailing it. He's nailing him musically.
Yeah,
he's got a
we
big
should
voice.
geek out on that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
But anyway,
it's
let's
amazing.
yeah,
But anyway,
let's
yeah,
move on.
we can talk about that offline because that's a
Yeah.
whole other thing. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, Henry.
Oh, boy. All right.
This will
I
be
didn't come.
interesting because he's a lot older than you guys, so he's probably going to be a little closer to me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me give you, yeah, I'll give you the quick skinny pretty much. I preface everything that I'm going to say from here on in that basically the one influence throughout, and you can pick almost any album. And this doesn't count as one of the
Okay.
favorites. Okay. Anything by the Beatles, number one. Basically, that was omnipresent, basically, as I said, pretty much throughout. Moving on, I'll start with basically pretty much, I did kind of get into a bit of the 20th century classical stuff, but I preferred, as much as I basically appreciate, where some of these other guys came from, my big influence, and the one I keep on going back to even now, is Roy Harris's Third Symphony. And there may be a surprise in the not too distant future, Advent related, but we'll see. Unless there's a mutiny, but we'll see. But basically, there's the Third Symphony by Roy Harris. He also used to write music for TV. There's a show back in the '60s called Profiles in Courage. He wrote the theme music for that. And it's in general, his style just fascinates me. It's not symmetrical in any way that you can basically put your finger on musically, but it just unfolds, and it's like you're going on this beautiful drive, and by the time you get done, you don't remember anywhere of where you've been, because there's nothing regular about it. But by the time you're there, you say, I want to do that again and again and again and again. So Third Symphony, Roy Harris. I'm partial to the Bernstein interpretation of it.
Who?
There's a guy from Dallas, a conductor, who basically does it really, really well also. Toscanini I don't like. He basically plays it way too fast. It sounds like he's got to go to the bathroom and he's got to get this done fast. But
He's
all right,
old,
so that's the classical. All right, now for next, moving back towards in the general direction of the stuff that we've been discussing, Mysterious Traveler by Weather Report.
Ooh, nice one.
That one affected me basically the very first time I heard it. It was the very first Weather Report album I ever bought, and everything from that up to and including the Jocko periods and stuff like that, I was hooked. But Mysterious Traveler was the catalyst for getting me into that stuff. The early stuff I appreciated, but it was a bit too abstract for me at that particular point. But I'd say Mysterious Traveler would probably be next.
Great album.
Great album.
Yeah, and basically after that, pretty much, I'd say since Mark has already mentioned Freehand, I'm going to go with Interview by Gentle Giant. Reason why is because I'm sure probably Mark will attest to this. I spent many an evening with my head between the speakers trying to figure out those angular chord stabs in the second idea. I was convinced it was completely random in the beginning. Now, listeners, just no, this is not random. This is actually worked out. It's actually composed this way. And I wouldn't rest until I got that section down. I had to figure out that section. I was absolutely obsessed with getting it down. And from that point, I said, okay, now I've got to get the first idea down, which I thought was pretty easy. It's not. And then the little transition, the little kind of like softer transitions between the sections were the third on the list. But I had to basically figure that out. So I'd say, even though I agree with Mark on probably the primacy of Freehand, I'll go with Interview because he's already mentioned it. And let's see, I guess basically that leaves out a whole lot of stuff, but I won't bore you guys with the details. Guilty Pleasure, MacArthur Park, Jimmy Webb, Richard Harris.
Jimmy Webb songbook.
No, I really love MacArthur Park, the Jimmy Webb, Roy, I keep saying Roy Harris, Richard Harris version, basically, pretty much. I just love that proto-prog middle section, the orchestral section type of situation, and the little 7/8 transitions between the verses and the bridge and stuff like that. Just I tear up whenever I hear those. They're just beautiful. And one other one, Guilty Pleasures, Slayer. I'm not Slayer, rather Slade. Run Away. That's it.
Cool.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Alan, hold a second because we're getting a little short. I'm going to do mine real quick.
Okay.
Excellent.
These are going to be kind of obscure. So you've never seen this. What it is it's the percussions of Strasbourg, or lay percussions of Strasbourg, and it's the Quebec. I never knew how to say it.
Yeah, you said it.
Quebec 8 Inventions, Opus 48 for percussion.
Mhm.
Some of the sounds that come out of there, and that just blew me away. I don't have to say much about this.
Right up there with the Godspell soundtrack for
You got
young
it.
theater kid
You got
sect.
This is kind of obscure. The Roto-Rooter
I have
Good
that
Time
one.
Christmas Band. Do you
I
have?
have
know
that
that.
one.
Wow,
That's a
no
great
way.
album.
That's great.
I love their Le Sabre dance.
Oh, Buick Sabre Dance.
Yeah,
I
right. Yeah.
actually got this album. I was at some fair in the Valley in San Fernando Valley, and two of the guys were there, and I said, "Oh, what do you got?" And I took it home and just went, "Oh my, I love it."
I like the reading of The Rite of Spring on that one too.
Yeah, it's just great stuff. And then, have you ever seen the Retro Rooter?
No.
It's a now I don't know if you guys are familiar with this band, Tranquility. The album is Silver, and very vocal band. It was around 72, something like 72. This is like a desert island for me.
Mm.
Just fabulous vocal. It's just great stuff. I love it. That I
Have
can't
to check that out.
stuff. Yeah.
Frank, I need to make a connection for you. So you know, from that's the London OCR of Jesus Christ Superstar, which Tim Rice also did the lyrics for. Murray Head was Judas on that album. Murray Head is also the American on the London OCR of Chess. There's your connection. Have fun.
Yeah. Well,
I just want to put that in your head.
Yeah. We got a couple minutes here, but the thing about the original Jesus Christ Superstar is Ian Gillan.
Absolutely.
Enough said.
Totally. Yeah.
And then Henry, you probably get this. Bach Concerto.
I have that.
Yes.
Bar Talk.
Yeah.
I have that
That's
as
for
well.
Bar Talk.
So wait, how many of us have this?
Percussion, strings, and celeste, actually.
I think we all have that one.
We all have that one.
Yeah, those are my two favorites: the concerto, and then music for strings and percussion, and then also the concerto for two pianos and percussion, which was actually the sonata. But anyway, and then my guilty pleasure. It was just, I mean, Joe, you would love, you love this.
I do.
The rhythm, the rhythm is going to get you.
The rhythm got me already. Yeah,
There's a good band behind her.
Yeah,
it's a really good
Miami
band.
Sound Machine, and and Emilio Estevez was, she's just awesome. Okay, so Alan, what's your faves?
Okay, well, since your question kind of alluded to being of influence as opposed to being favorites, I approached it very strictly. My voice is cracking, going through puberty again. Strictly.
Here's our tenor, finally.
From the aspect of albums that were really influential to my upbringing. I'm going to sneak a fourth one in because I just have to. But I'll do the original three first, and I have those on well, two of them I have on vinyl, and the first one I'll bring up in a second, and I'll just say it. I had mentioned that I'd been sent away to boarding school when I was 12, when I was a classical violinist, although I'd gotten into some other stuff like Mike Oldfield. And one of my early roommates there, I was still 12, played 4 albums over and over again, of which 3 I really like quite a bit. And there's my guilty pleasure is actually going to be related to one of those bands, but the one that just like grabbed me so intensely that it just sort of single-handedly shifted my whole musical sensibility from being a classical violinist and really primarily being into classical music into being a rock guitarist is Queen's Sheer Heart Attack. Take it out. And this is my original copy from,
Wow.
probably 1970, probably about 1975 or 6 myself. And it's my mom bought these labels. That pretty much ruined the value of all these things for resale. With my name on them. But yeah.
Stone Cold Crazy.
Oh yeah. So
Love that
it was
tune.
just, it really just struck me in a way of combining what I already loved about music so much, but with this energy and creativity, and I just loved like everything about it. So that was really the big one, and that was the biggest catalyst for me, shifting my whole musical persona, I would say. And then, well, maybe I'll just do the 4 in order and cheat, because the next one would be one that well, I'll just show it, and luckily it's different than you guys. Octopus. Again, my original version.
That was my gateway.
This was, and also it's got the same sticker on it from the collection.
Is that a cut? Is that a cutout?
Is it a cutout?
No, it's not. No, I got it actually. I
gave
don't
mine
want to
away.
go into a whole story about this one in particular, but I'd gotten turned on to Gentle Giant by name early on in high school, but never heard any that I knew of. And I had a friend at Berkeley who played a lot of stuff for me. A couple of friends, but one in particular. And he played me the first side of The Missing Piece, which I really liked, but it didn't grab me. It grabbed me enough to seek out more, but it didn't grab me like Octopus did. So when I quit Berkeley at the end of 1979, in December of my semester, I went home to New York City. I went out to this chain called Disco Mat, which was a big discount record store chain in Manhattan. And I went to my local one, and there was a Gentle Giant section. I just kind of looked at the covers, and that was the one I picked. And that was like, that pretty much changed my life in terms of my adult musical life. And that was sort of the trajectory of, or the reference of where I wanted to be. Didn't want to mimic it, but that was kind of where my head was, and it's pretty much, remained. That being said, from there, I discovered this guy by accident that actually writes a Mike Oldfield. I was on a ski trip in 1986, the end of 86, after I split up with my first wife with some buddies. And in Rutland, Vermont, there was this kind of small record store in a mall, and I was looking through the cutout section, and I found a Mike Oldfield album I had never heard of before. So I bought it. It was like $4 or something. It turns out it really wasn't a Mike Oldfield album. He just played on it, but it was marketed that way. It was Pekka Pohjola's, I think it was called The Consequences of Indecision, which the original Finnish one is Kisojen Liito. I guess if my pronunciation is close. But I went home and I went out to Sam Goody, and I found my first other album of his was Space Waltz, Pekka Pohjola. And so this really led me down a whole other path of musical interest. And there's also like Pekka's influences just stuck with me from like day one. And I think I kind of write more in his style in a lot of ways than anybody else's these days, or the elements of his musical sensibilities kind of sneak in. And so that probably should be my 3, although the Gentle Giant Octopus was sort of almost too obvious, so I didn't include it. And then the last one, making it 4 and cheating, I know, is Mr. Sirius's Barren Dream. I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Sirius, but this album was mainly a one-man band with a female vocalist and a drummer. The guy's name is Kazuhiro Miyatake, and he goes by the name of Mr. Sirius. And it's just an amazing hybrid of prog, fusion, classical. It's just, his sensibilities have kind of snuck in to a lot of what I do as well. So.
Oh, Kenso, Alan?
Well, I love Kenzo too. It's a trouble. It's supposed to be 3 and I snuck in 4.
Yeah,
I
it's
pinch hit
it,
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
it
very
was kind
difficult.
of a dirty trick.
Yeah,
But,
so
It was a
dirty
tricky one,
trick.
yeah.
And
We,
then
we talked about it beforehand. It was, he's gonna pay me afterwards.
yeah. So, but keeping it to 4 is pretty good. But I have 2 guilty pleasures.
okay, what do you got?
Sneaking
So
in.
the first one is another album that my roommate at boarding school played a lot. This is the album after it, but I always really liked the band, and for some reason, I guess this was a new album at the time I got it, and I just love it, even though it's pretty simple and straightforward. Is Sweet Desolation Boulevard. I'm sorry, Give Us a Wink. Give Us a Wink. It's the one he played was Desolation with the winking. And
That's
you know,
awesome.
to me, Action is just one of the best 1-4-5 tunes out there. You know, with the I guess the biggest hit off of here. Although I much prefer the unedited version. It's got the little cash register, an extra riff with the harmonized vocals in it. But yeah, I still really enjoy this. And then my other guilty pleasure, and this is really odd because I'm not a fan of the concept of musicals, to be honest. But it's one of my favorite things is the soundtrack of Nightmare Before Christmas, Danny Elfman.
Ah,
It's just such a spectacular soundtrack. And I
Well,
love the movie too.
yeah. I always forget his Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman, yeah.
Yeah, so
He's
you
he's
know,
awesome. You ought to
so
write a musical, right, Joe? I mean, like a stage
What?
musical.
that's what
That's
I got.
awesome.
No other cheats. That's it. That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one other guilty pleasure, and that's Ace of Base, The Sign.
Mhm.
But it's
Oh,
a
I
great
saw
tune.
that. Yeah.
You know, it's a great tune, but just don't tell anybody.
Actually, my wife reminded me of another one I should have said before. Downtown. You know the song Downtown? But not by
Petula
Petula
Clark?
Clark, by Mrs. Miller.
Oh, Mrs. Miller. Oh gosh, yeah.
Mrs. Miller Downtown.
Hey, you guys don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, I know Mrs. Miller.
Yeah.
Sounds.
Oh, wait a minute. I think you've played that for me once.
Oh yeah,
What
There
yeah.
was
else?
that movie,
I
but there was a
think.
movie recently about some woman who couldn't sing, but she had a lot of money, so she could pay
Oh.
people to come
Oh,
and
yeah.
see her and tell her how wonderful she was.
Yeah.
Mrs. Miller was that, but she knew she couldn't sing. They actually cut her a deal and said to her, "Look, I can't promote you as a serious singer, but if you're prepared to do this for laughs, I got a gig for you."
Yeah.
And she was heartbroken, but she was a good enough sport to say, "Okay, I'll go along with it." Type of a situation.
That's
She
great.
carved out a nice little niche for herself.
Wow.
It reminds me of William Shatner doing Lucy in the Sky. With,
Yeah, but it was
And I
funny.
could
He
just-
took himself seriously. She did.
I know, and I could just see that where the sound booth guy's up there, and you go, click. Yeah, that was good. That would click. Click. Yeah, that was great. Great, Bill. Keep it. Anyway.
You just reminded me of another guilty pleasure, but that would be the Portsmouth Symphonians plays
wait,
the
what do you
popular
got?
classics.
Speaking of
What?
Vino.
I'm sorry, what?
What's
Say
that?
again?
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was gonna say Portsmouth Symphonia plays the popular classics is another great guilty pleasure, but that just reminded me of the Mrs. Miller version. But anyway,
All right.
we could go on and on.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's talking about musicals. I was, I think, 10 when Sound of Music, not Sound of Music, West Side Story came out, and we had the soundtrack album, and I was like totally smitten. And my mother, I can remember my mother asking me, "Why do you like this? Is it the words? You know, because it's ever loving, whatever, you know, the Jet song. There were some kind of iffy words." I said, "No, it's the music. You know, Bernstein's Mass."
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time. There was so much I wanted to cover. I think one thing we haven't really talked about Advent. We talked about you guys. The one thing I've noticed about Advent is, much like Tranquility, is the vocals. You guys, you know, you cover some different areas of vocal. I'm kind of curious, did Did any of you guys have choir or voice lessons? Yeah. Yeah.
I actually directed choir at my church for a while, basically, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Palestrina, Victoria, Hassler, Gregorian chant. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Great
Did you ever
stuff.
do the Foray Requiem?
We didn't do the foray. We did, what else did we do, basically? We a lot of Victoria. I haven't. We unfortunately the choir that I directed, we basically had we had a small talent pool, so I was
Yeah.
lucky to have 4 parts basically. But when we did, we actually did some of the
The
usual.
William Byrd.
William
right?
Byrd. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep.
It's awesome. And of course, there are some definite Gentle Giant influences in the madrigal stuff. What is it? GK? What is it? Contra Mundum?
Yep. GK Against the
Mhm.
World.
Yeah.
That is so much fun to sing. I hope we get
Yeah,
to do that again.
you know, it sounds like it. There was one other thing I wanted to kind of, in looking at, first of all, let's pretend I don't know what progressive music is, what progressive rock is. How would you describe progressive rock? Anybody?
Okay. I'd say
Yeah.
basically pretty much. I'd say basically pretty much. The progressive is a misnomer. I'd say probably since a lot of the pop music that came before that was 12 bar based. Nothing wrong with that. I love a lot of that stuff. Huge Dr. John fan, among others, type of a situation. But I liked the fact that you were encouraged in the direction of eclecticism if you wanted to basically bring other stuff in. I think that's basically what it means for me. I liked that connection between the stuff that was coming out in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond type of a situation, and older traditions. I like the fact that it's actually part of a continuum. So I would say probably more, I guess, eclectic pop would probably be a little bit klutzier, but maybe more descriptive, at least from my standpoint anyway.
Uh-huh. I can see that. Anybody else got a? Oh, Alan, you're muted.
Oh, okay, I
There you are.
guess, I mean, that's, people argue over this particular definition, for years and years. And I've never really tried to do it myself, but off the top of my head, I would just say that it's rock music that incorporates, elements of other more traditional music, I guess more typically European classical, and English classical as well. And same with like folk music, non-American generally, folk music. But what I love about progressive rock in particular is it's the most open of genres, because you can pretty much incorporate anything you want in
Yeah.
there, and it's fine. It doesn't sound out of place. It's very open. There are things that are certainly more typical and that you heard in a lot of the influences of the classic bands that sort of define the genre, but you can really, what other genre of music is there where you can pretty much just pull in from any other genre? And it also has a ton of respect for tradition, while also the sort of iconoclastic nature of whatever the heck you want to do. It's cool. It can be really experimental and noisy, and all of it. It's all, it's just very open. It's music without restriction.
Christopher the Mill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that a little one final thing, just to tag on to the end of Alan's, and that's anything that kind of takes you slightly out of your normal comfort level of whatever you're normally listening to. Whether it be a song or an entire album format or anything. It's something that if you're going along the line and you're listening, and all of a sudden the thing takes a left turn somewhere on you that you really weren't expecting. That to me is, that's a portion of what I like about music, and then I'm kind of the same way about movies like that too. I'm a big fan of Hitchcock movies, and they can kind of take turns here and there, and you're never really sure where it's going to end up, So I like music like that. I like films like that. So something that kind of takes you out of your normal comfort level for me.
I see the word progressive is moving something forward instead of staying right here, you move it forward a little bit. And in that sense, just about anything is progressive. You look at Chicago's first album, Chicago Transit Authority. That's progressive. You know, is it progressive rock? Well, no, but it's progressive. So it's a fascinating thing. And along those lines, Prog Archives has you guys listed as eclectic prog. And when I was listening yesterday, of course I'm driving a van, nobody was with me, I was on the way there and trying to write down stuff. I heard you've got like symphonic, even a symphonic sea shanty, right? You have chamber, baroque, the madrigal, you have the classical arrangements. Henry, you did I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but the two pieces.
On the first album, yeah, the William Byrd and the Torino piece.
Yes, yeah.
We can thank Alan for the Torino. I wouldn't have known about that one.
That's one of my mom's favorite pieces, a piano miniature by Torino.
There's one, I can't remember what the heck song it was, but there's all of a sudden it breaks into like jazz, and then it goes back. Huh?
Rachmaninoff off of Sentinel you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool. And then
I was trying to simulate kind of like Italian pop from about the mid 1960s, like Henry Mancini. That's kind of like the whole idea of that little
cool.
digressions. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so Mark talking about taking a left turn. It's like all of a sudden, you're waiting for Frank Sinatra to come out.
Yeah.
But then you also have some just straight ahead rock. You got the nice quiet acoustical stuff, Alan, a lot of your guitar stuff. And then there was one song that was, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but it was off the first album. It's and I can't pronounce it. Fourth track.
Oh, Trompe-l'oeil?
Yeah.
Trompe-l'oeil.
I mean, that's AOR, right?
Yeah.
You were just doing big arena rock right there.
Henry, you want to say a little bit about that? Because that tune has an interesting history.
Yeah, basically pretty much what happened was that basically a friend of mine was an amateur. Well, I shouldn't say amateur. He was basically striving to be a professional. He wanted to be a filmmaker. And he was putting together this kind of horror story. And he needed somebody to do music for a demo that he wanted to put together for I think it was called the IF something or other, whatever it was. There's some independent film network basically in New York. And he said, I need to put together this little demo, and I need music for about 7 to 10 minutes, basically, pretty much of what I'm going to be putting together as a little kind of like trailer for it. And he needed a scene for a go-go bar where there was a girl dancing, basically, and they needed music for the go-go bar. And basically, we couldn't get the thing to play when we actually got to the bar to photograph the scene or to shoot the scene. So I said, well, so he asked me, he goes, there's a jukebox here. What's roughly in the same tempo as Trompe-l'oeil? And I said, I'm looking through this thing. I said, well, what's the song by U2? It's da, 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 da. I can't think of the name of the help me out. Only to be with you, da, 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 whatever that song is. It was the same tempo. So we put a quarter into the machine. She danced to that. But Trompe-l'oeil was the actual music that was supposed to be dancing to in the film. So anyway, that went nowhere. But I said we have this, and I said, and as first efforts go, we didn't have a whole lot of material. So I said, well, Alan, if you could maybe kind of like come up with a better guitar solo than that was on here originally, and Alan promptly obliged. And we put some new vocals on it, type of a thing, and that was pretty much it. But yeah, it was essentially intended as it was pure 80s all the way. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was done as one of my Berkeley projects too.
Right. I remember that drummer actually did a really crackerjack job on that, basically on the Berkeley project. Yeah, good drummer.
Cool.
It was fun, and we also, that was, as a point of trivia, it was the thing we got the most flack about when we used to just float our demo around, like, as we were building up the first album, we would end up sharing our demo cassettes with people of all different types. Some we didn't know, some had labels or mail order businesses. And the biggest complaint that we got was Trompe l'oeil is not Prague.
Yeah.
Should have been a detective.
But in a way, the debut album is kind of like Octopus in that there's a lot of different stuff in there. It's kind of a sampler. The keyboards, both Mark and Henry, do you mentioned all those great analog keyboards. Do you use any analog anymore, or is it all digital?
All digital, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
For me, at least, it's all digital. I mean, it was great. I actually lucked into a job working for Triple S Electronics right out of electronics school. Actually, I got done basically. My first gig was working on synths and drum machines. And basically, pretty much, I was pretty much working there when they made the transition from you needed boxes to get the different keyboards or drum machines to talk to each other and get in sync with each other. And MIDI had just basically kind of like arrived on the scene to kind of get everybody to talk to each other. But yeah, originally, pretty much, my first synth was the EML. But after that, it became much easier to just go digital altogether. You basically punch up a patch, you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah,
we use some vintage keyboards on some of the recordings too that you guys have. We use the Wurlitzer, the clavinet, which is a C model, right? The C model clavinet.
Yes, yeah. There was a lot of that stuff. Was a lot of the stuff I've got here is well, some of it is Henry's old keyboards.
Awesome.
As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the eye candy that I saw growing up, and some of the sounds that came out of it, I was like, wow, this stuff is really, really great. There's nothing that sounds like it when you have it actually in the room. No matter how digital you make it, it's still, there's just something about the real thing that just doesn't sound the same. So we did. So I acquired Henry's clavinet, his Wurlitzer, which is behind me. We have there's a Hammond C3 back here. I got a CP70 in front of me. So we'll utilize some analog things on the albums and stuff. A lot of times Henry will compose, and we'll try to he'll compose on his synths, and then any of the things that we think can be easily translated over and work well in an analog way with analog gear, we'll try to incorporate. It won't be everything, but some of that stuff will translate pretty well to the old gear.
Yeah,
and I use the Moog source for the Uncharted Path. Right. That little melody that comes in the acoustic section, starts up high, ends up on the bass. That's my old Moog source.
Probably my favorite Moog keyboard is the Moog source. That's a good one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Of course, one thing is a B3, I can't see how digitally you're going to get the same attack, and I don't know. I've never really had the pleasure of playing a B3, but when you listen to like some of the great jazz B3 players, and you're getting all that pop, and
well, they can come really close. Like the Nords come really, really close. I'm sure there are some keyboards out there that you treat it, in mixing and stuff well enough that it's going to sound as close as you can get, and people will be hard pressed to tell whether it's the real thing or not. But
it's a lot lighter to carry upstairs.
That
Leslie.
Yeah, you get like Prog Game Show, real B3 or fake. Real.
Yeah. Okay, we're running out of time here. One thing I did want to mention, there's going to be a lot of links down below there. Don't look at them now. Look at them later, but they're going to be down there. Joe, Broadside Electric.
Yeah.
I was listening. You're mainly on just with Teeth in the live album,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
I like
I
it.
should have put it.
I
Thank you.
with Teeth is a great album. It don't take this the wrong way, but I could see you guys playing at a steampunk convention.
We played the main stage of the Philly Folk Festival. Gene Shea introduced us there. We that album's made some top 10 lists.
Has it?
It made Gene Shea's top 10 list actually that year it came out.
It's on my wish list for
I'm sorry,
Bandcamp.
I misspoke. The album before that, More Bad News, made Gene Shea's top 10 list, not with Teeth, but also excellent album. But yeah, that's and you know, we pretty much bill ourselves as progressive folk.
Right,
We mix all kinds of stuff up, and
yeah, it goes to a lot of different places. You know,
yeah.
I like it. So the things. Look, anyway, we should have done a couple more hours. I want to thank you guys. Like I said, there's going to be a bunch of links down below to check out Advent's music. To say it quickly, there's 3 albums. 1997 was the debut, self-titled Advent. 2006, Cantus Firmus. 2015, Silent Sentinel. Very nice album. And you guys are working on a new one, right?
We are. Yeah, we've got just about enough material kind of at least scoped out, you know, for the next album. We're just now kind of putting all the details together for it. But yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I got about 2 minutes left here. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you.
And,
Frank.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Frank.
having us.
Thank
It
you.
was a lot of fun.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
We're going to have
Thanks,
to do
Frank.
this again, and Joe and I are going to have to swap theater stories. I got to do
Can
2
do.
productions of Sweeney Todd. It was awesome.
I saw the original version with Angela Lansbury and Len Cariou. Amazing.
I saw it in L.A.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
A real quick story on that is it was a matinee, and 2 old ladies were behind us who obviously had the package deals, and I heard, well, it isn't a very pretty set. And I forgot to check and see if they were still there at the end of the show.
Frank, get this. I was just in Maryland recently to see, and I kid you not, this was approved by Stephen Sondheim before he died, a prog metal version of Sweeney Todd.
Oh my
and
gosh.
It was phenomenal. Oh yes, and it was phenomenal.
I gotta look into
yeah,
that.
I don't know if it's released or not, but it was great. But anyway,
Well,
again, we'll
okay.
talk about that later.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay, thanks again, Frank.
Thank you,
you,
Frank.
Frank.
For watching.
Thanks, Frank.